In section 9.1, we're going to be talking about percent. The word percent means hundredths. And we can write hundredths as a decimal, or we can write hundredths as a fraction. It means 1 out of 100, or 1 penny out of $1. When we have a fraction that's easily divided into 100, we can change that fraction to hundredths and then to a percent. 25 times 4 is 100, so 22 times 4 is 88. So 88 hundredths is 88%. Now sometimes our denominator is not so friendly. Let's say that we have a denominator of 30. Well, that doesn't divide evenly into 100. So what we can do is take the denominator and divide it into the numerator. 30 won't go into 20, so I add another 0. 30 goes into 200 6 times. Add another 0. 30 goes into 200 6 times. And I can see that every time that I divide, I'm always going to get a 6. And so I can write that remainder as a fraction and reduce it. And now I can change that decimal to a percent by moving the decimal right 2 places. So this would be 6 and 2/3 tenths %. So changing the fraction to a decimal and the decimal to a percent is sometimes the route that you have to go. But any time that your denominator is already 100, then that's the percent that you have. 79 hundredths is 79%. Whether that is a decimal, 79 hundredths, or whether that is the fraction, 79 hundredths. If your decimal doesn't have 2 places, then you need to add a 0. And so now you have 80%. So 8 tenths has to be changed into hundredths, just as adding a 0 changed 8 tenths to 80 hundredths. The fraction 8 tenths changed to 80 hundredths all means 80%. Now, if you have a percent and you want to change that to a fraction, you know that 100 is the denominator and 16 is the numerator. Or if you have a percent and you want to change it to a decimal, we have to remember our place value because the first place is tenths place, the second place is hundredths place. So 16 hundredths would be 1/10 and 6 hundredths, or decimal 1/6. Now it doesn't matter if you have decimals in the percent, because you still have to make it into hundredths. So moving the decimal to the left 2 places, that's what makes it into hundredths. And so this would be decimal 3365. That would be the decimal equivalent to that percent. So this is tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. So this is 3,365 10 thousandths, written as a fraction. So percent, decimals, and fractions are all related to each other. Sometimes we have word problems and we need to write them in an equation, so it helps us to solve the problems. Always remember that the word of means to multiply. So if you have 7 5/10% of 360, that means that we're going to multiply 7 5/10% by 360. Well, 7 5/10% written as a decimal is 0.075. Remember, the decimal has to go left 2 places. And so now we can multiply to get our answer. So we always have to change the percent to a decimal. Before you multiply. Probably where you use percent most often is in sales tax. Everything we buy and even some food items, so I think we don't always pay on all food items, but we have to pay a percent of tax. Now in Kentucky, we pay a 6% tax. So the decimal equivalent to that would be 6 hundredths. So if I purchase a dress for $96.47, and I want to know how much tax I'm going to have to pay, then I simply multiply 6 hundredths by $96.47, and this would be how much tax I pay. If I want to know the price to pay including tax, I add the tax onto the price of the dress, of course, but one way we can do that without having to do that addition is to take the price of the dress times 1.5. 1.06, and what I get is the total cost. So I don't have to add back on the tax if I multiply it by 1.06. It gives me the price of the dress plus the tax, or the total cost. If I just multiply by 0.06, then I get the amount of tax that I have to pay. And I have to add it back on if I'm wanting to get the total price. Another use that you may have for percent is in purchasing items on sale. So let's say you have your eye on a TV at Walmart and the original price of the TV is $500. But they have it at a 60% off sale. Now there's two questions that you might be asked. One would be, how much are you going to get off? How much are you going to save? And if that's the case, then you multiply the price of the TV by the sales rate. And this would give you how much you're going to save. If your question is, how much am I going to pay? Then you're not paying 60%, you're going to pay 40%. So you get 60% off, you're going to pay 40%. So this time, if I'm wanting to know how much I'm going to pay for the TV, then I would take $500 times 40 hundredths. And that would give me the price, the sale price to pay. Merchants use percents to help them mark up items. So if it costs them a certain amount, they want to make a profit. So the cost of the item plus the profit is going to be what they sell the item for, or what we have to pay for it. So let's say that you are a merchant and you have these boots that you have to pay $200 for. That's your cost. And you want to make a 50% markup. So this is what you're going to make. This will be your profit. What you will do is take the price of the boots and you will multiply them by 50 hundredths, and this will be your amount of profit. If you want to know what you're going to sell the boots for, then you would take the cost of the boots and multiply it by 1.50, because this would add back on the price of the boots plus your profit. That saves you from having to add. You could take the amount of profit and add it back on to $200, and that will give you the answer. But if all you want to know is what you're going to sell them for, then you can do that in one step without having to add back on the price of the boots. Percent of increase, or the percent of decrease, is always very confusing for students. So it's very simple. So heads up on this. Let's say that I bought a horse trailer and I paid $10,000 for it. Well, I've had it for a few years. It's not new anymore. So the value of it has decreased. So I'm going to sell the trailer, the old trailer. Let's say for $7,000. So I have a loss. So what is my percent of decrease? What you do is take the amount of decrease and you divide it by the original cost. So when I subtract, I have $3,000. That's the amount of decrease. And the price when it was new was $10,000. So I'm going to mark off the zeros. I have 3/10, but I have to change that to hundredths. So that's 30 hundredths. So I have a 30% decrease. And it works the same way for percent of increase. So let's say that you bought a diamond ring, and over years the value of it has increased. You're still going to take the amount of increase and divide it by the original cost. So what happens first always is your denominator, and the subtraction is always in your numerator, and then you change that into a percent.